A raise. You should be grateful we even keep you. Richard Cole laughed, his voice bouncing off the cold conference room walls. I sat perfectly still in my chair, the quarterly performance review folder open before me on the polished wood table. I stared at the numbers I had compiled. 7 years of exceptional evaluations. 7 years without a single cost of living adjustment or pay increase. Walter, your request is simply unrealistic, Sarah Vance, the chief financial officer, told me. She tilted her head with an exaggerated expression of sympathy that did not reach her eyes. Ambitious, considering current market conditions, the rest of the leadership team exchanged knowing glances around the table. There were 8 people in that room making decisions about my financial worth, and not a single one of them had ever stepped onto the factory floor to see what I actually did for the business. I developed the dynamic laser calibration protocol that increased our overall manufacturing precision by 37%, I said, keeping my voice flat and even. I did not want to show them the frustration bubbling under my skin. Production cycle time was cut in half because of my calibrations. The Eastbrook Aerospace contract alone, which we secured through aggressive technical specifications, was only possible because of my work, I added. Gordon Fox, the VP of Sales, interrupted me with a wave of his hand. We secured the Eastbrook deal through superior sales negotiation, Walter. Everyone knows that. We all knew that was a lie. Gordon could not explain the difference between a micron and a millimeter if his commission depended on it. My technical specifications were the only reason Eastbrook signed the contract. I have trained 16 junior calibration technicians since I started here, I continued, refusing to let him derail me. I have personally troubleshot critical machine failures for our top 5 clients in the middle of the night. The European compliance certification would have collapsed entirely if I had not spent 6 weeks rewriting our testing manuals to pass the regional inspectors. It is a team effort, Walter, Richard Cole cut in, drumming his manicured fingers on the table. Everyone pulls their weight here. You are not the only one working hard. My salary has not changed since the day I was hired 7 years ago, I said. I am only asking to align my compensation with current industry standards. Richard leaned back in his leather chair, exchanging amused glances with Sarah. Industry standards are for average contributors, Walter. If you want extraordinary compensation, you need to show us extraordinary results. My chest tightened as I listened to him. The calibration breakthrough I had pioneered 5 years ago had generated millions of dollars in additional revenue. Last quarter's internal report, which I had accidentally seen on a shared network drive, attributed a 28% profit increase directly to my proprietary laser alignment innovations. The numbers speak for themselves, I said, sliding my market research printout across the table. Engineers with my qualifications, certifications, and track record are compensated at least 30% higher in this region. Richard did not even glance at the paper. He simply pushed it back toward me with his pen. A raise? You should be grateful we even keep you. The VP laughed during my review. The whole leadership team nodded in agreement. I stood up, closed my review folder, and placed a sealed white envelope in the center of the table. Thank you for your time, I said. I turned and walked out of the room, leaving the door open. 3 days later, when they finally opened that envelope and saw where I was going, their panic calls began flooding my phone. My name is Walter Miller. I am 58 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I was the lead calibration engineer at Aegis Precision Manufacturing. The company manufactured high-tolerance industrial equipment for aerospace, defense, and medical technology sectors. My title on my business cards was Senior Technical Specialist, a label that used to keep my salary low while expanding my responsibilities every single year. I grew up taking apart every mechanical device in my parents' house in Charlotte, North Carolina. By 12, I could rebuild an electric lawnmower engine. At 16, I was modifying the manual lathes in my high school metal shop to achieve tolerances their tiny budget could never afford. My engineering professors in college called me Precision Walter, a nickname that stuck with me throughout my career. When I joined Aegis, I was grateful for the position. I had spent decades working for larger firms, and the promise of a stable role where my expertise could shine was appealing. The starting salary was acceptable at the time, and the management promised regular performance reviews with corresponding salary adjustments. The calibration breakthrough came during my second year at Aegis. For months, I had noticed minor inconsistencies in our testing apparatus. These were tiny variations that the other technicians dismissed as acceptable margins of error. But in high-precision aerospace manufacturing, those tiny margins represented the difference between a successful launch and a catastrophic failure. I spent my weekends experimenting with alternative alignment methods. I purchased specialized optical mirrors and laser diodes piece by piece using my own money, setting up a temporary lab in my garage. The solution came to me at 3 in the morning after weeks of trial and error. I developed a hybrid approach that integrated digital calibration software with manual mechanical fine-tuning. It was a sequence that nobody in the industry had tried before. When I demonstrated the protocol to the engineering department, the results were immediate. Our measurement precision improved by 37% while cutting calibration time from 6 hours to just under 3 hours. The production floor implemented my technique within a week. Suddenly, Aegis was outperforming every competitor in accuracy tests. Orders surged, and quality control complaints dropped to 0. I waited for the recognition, a promotion, or at least a standard bonus. Instead, at the next quarterly meeting, my innovation was presented to the board of directors as our new proprietary company method. My name was never mentioned once. Richard Cole took questions from impressed board members while I sat in the back row, silent. "This is just how corporate business works," my colleague Martin Lewis told me after the meeting. "Individual recognition is not how you advance here, Walter. Just be patient and keep your head down." So I was patient. I continued to train new hires. I documented every step of the calibration protocol so that production would not suffer during my rare vacation days. I answered emergency calls from clients at midnight, walking them through troubleshooting steps. I did everything they asked of me, believing that eventually my dedication would be rewarded. But the review meeting proved that I was nothing more than an undervalued asset to them, an asset they assumed would never leave. During my 5th year at Aegis, the company launched its European expansion. The regulatory standards there differed significantly from American requirements. The first shipment of machines failed inspection spectacularly, leaving millions of dollars in equipment sitting in European warehouses, completely unusable. The expansion team was in a panic, and the company was facing massive financial penalties. "Walter, we need solutions, not explanations," Richard Cole told me during an emergency meeting. "Either fix this or we will find someone who can." I canceled my plans for the next 6 weekends. My relationship with Linda ended because I missed her family gathering in Chicago. I worked 80 hours a week, redesigned critical calibration components, and wrote new testing manuals to meet the European compliance standards. By the 7th week, our equipment passed the inspection with scores that exceeded local manufacturers. The company celebrated the successful expansion with a party I could not even attend because I was on a call with German technicians walking them through the new procedures. Each year, my performance reviews praised my dedication and expertise. Each year, my salary remained unchanged. When I raised the issue, HR told me the company was undergoing restructuring or that they had to prioritize team metrics. I watched younger engineers, some with less than 2 years of experience, negotiate starting salaries higher than mine. "That is just how negotiation works," the HR director told me. "We value your performance, but we cannot disrupt internal equity by adjusting established employees." So I stopped asking. I quietly began to plan my exit. My reputation in the industry had spread, despite the company's attempts to hide my contributions. Before I started applying to other companies, I took a critical legal step. I had written the entire calibration manual and developed the software scripts used to run the laser alignment tools. I had done this work on my own time, in my own garage lab, using equipment I bought myself. Aegis had never asked me to sign an intellectual property assignment agreement that covered my off-hours independent research. Their legal department was too disorganized to notice. My personal attorney advised me to register the copyright of these manuals and scripts with the United States Copyright Office. I did exactly that, receiving registered certificates under 17 U.S.C. 106, which granted me the exclusive rights to reproduce, distribute, and display my written work and software code. Shortly after my registrations were finalized, I received an unexpected email. It was from Rachel Thorne, the director of the Industrial Certification Authority. The ICA was the primary regulatory body that set the testing standards for the entire manufacturing sector. Their certification was the difference between market access and bankruptcy for companies like Aegis. Rachel wrote that they were creating a new position, Chief Innovation Officer, to modernize certification protocols across the industry. She had reviewed my technical publications and wanted to discuss my interest. The compensation they offered was 3 times what I was making at Aegis, and the role would give me the authority to shape industry-wide practices. I met Rachel for dinner, and within 3 hours, I realized I had found my path forward. I need 2 weeks to transition my current projects, I told her. Take your time, she replied. We have waited years for someone with your expertise. The morning after my annual review, I drafted my resignation letter. It was professional and concise. I stated that I would be departing in 2 weeks to pursue another opportunity, and that I would ensure my daily tasks were documented. I slipped the letter into a white envelope. At 9:30 a.m. the next day, I walked into the executive conference room where the leadership team was holding their daily briefing. I knocked once, walked in, and placed the envelope in the center of the table. Thank you for your time, I said, and walked out before they could reply. For 3 days, the envelope remained unopened on Richard Cole's desk. I continued working, documenting basic processes and training colleagues. Then, on the afternoon of the 3rd day, my phone began vibrating continuously. I had 6 missed calls from HR, 4 from Richard, and 2 from Sarah Vance. I ignored the calls and finished my work. The next morning, Evelyn Ward from HR was waiting at my desk. Walter, she said, her voice hushed. Richard opened your letter. He is very concerned. Can we talk in the private conference room? I followed her into the room where Richard and Sarah were already waiting. Richard pushed my resignation letter toward me. What is the meaning of this, Walter? He asked. It is my 2 weeks' notice, I replied. I have accepted another position. Where? Sarah demanded. I would prefer not to disclose that until I begin my new role, I said. Richard leaned forward, his arrogant smirk from my review completely gone. Walter, we may have been a bit hasty during your review. Let us revisit your compensation request. The team was under a lot of stress that day, Evelyn added. We value your contributions here tremendously. I appreciate that, I said, but my decision is final. Whatever they are paying you, we will match it, Sarah said. I thought about the 7 years of ignored requests, the long nights, the canceled weekends, and the credit they had stolen from me. This is not about the money, I said. It is about my career growth. We can create a new role for you, Richard offered. Senior Calibration Director, with a team reporting to you. I declined their offer. They continued to negotiate, eventually offering a 50% raise, a director title, and a seat on the quality committee. I declined every single offer with increasing certainty. On my final day, I signed the exit paperwork, handed my security badge to the receptionist, and walked out the door. The 3 weeks between my departure from Aegis Precision Manufacturing and my first day at the Industrial Certification Authority were the first real vacation I had taken in over a decade. I drove up to Michigan to visit my parents, spent my afternoons hiking in the state parks, and slept without setting an alarm. I ignored 14 phone calls from various numbers associated with Aegis, deleting their voicemails without listening to them. On my first day at the ICA, Rachel Thorne showed me to my new office. It was a spacious room with a large window overlooking the city, a stark contrast to the cramped cubicle I had occupied for 7 years. The certification standards have not been updated in nearly 8 years, Rachel explained during our first meeting. Manufacturing technology has evolved, but our compliance requirements have remained stagnant. Your primary objective is to modernize our calibration and precision guidelines. I spent my first month reviewing the existing standards and identifying loopholes that allowed companies to take shortcuts. By the 6th week, I drafted a set of revised requirements. These new rules raised the standard for precision measurements, particularly in aerospace and medical technology manufacturing. These are substantial changes. Walter, Julian Croft, the technical review director, noted during a planning session. Some of the older manufacturers are going to struggle to comply with these tolerances. Any manufacturer using modern best practices will have no issue passing, I replied. The changes will only impact companies that are using outdated equipment or skipping regular calibration intervals to save on operational costs. Like extending calibration cycles beyond recommended limits? Julian asked. Exactly like that, I said, thinking of how Aegis routinely ran machines for 18 months without recalibration, a practice I had repeatedly flagged to Richard Cole as a major risk. The new standards were officially published 3 months later. Within hours of the release, my phone rang. It was Martin Lewis, my former colleague from Aegis. "Walter, have you seen the new ICA guidelines?" he asked, his voice tense. "I have," I replied. "These precision requirements and calibration cycles are practically impossible for us to meet," Martin said. "Our renewal is due next month, and we are nowhere near compliant." "They are not impossible, Martin," I said. "I implemented those exact protocols at Aegis 3 years ago, but leadership refused to adopt them permanently because of the cost of the optical sensors. The ICA offers transition consulting services through our engineering department," I added, giving him our official response. "I can refer your team to them." Martin sighed, admitting that Richard Cole had already hired an expensive external consulting firm to handle their transition. 2 weeks later, Aegis requested an expedited pre-assessment review. The inspection was assigned to one of our senior field auditors to ensure there was no conflict of interest on my end. The auditor's report arrived on my desk 5 days later. Aegis had failed the pre-assessment by a significant margin, their equipment precision was inconsistent, and their calibration documentation was incomplete. I forwarded the report to the certification committee with standard recommendations for compliance. I did not give them any special treatment, positive or negative. 3 days later, Richard Cole called my direct office line. "Walter," he began without any greeting. "We need to talk about these new certification standards. All communication regarding active certifications must go through our official filing portal, Richard," I replied. "This is not about the portal," he snapped. "These standards are clearly designed to target our specific manufacturing processes. This feels like a personal vendetta." "The standards apply to every manufacturer in this sector," I said. "Many of your competitors are already in compliance." "You know exactly what you are doing," Richard accused. "You are using your new position to punish us for not giving you that raise." I paused for a moment, letting the silence stretch over the line. "Richard, I am recording this call as required by ICA policy for all certification inquiries. Would you like to rephrase your statement for the official record?" He hung up immediately. The annual industry summit was held in Atlanta 6 months later. My keynote presentation on precision engineering and calibration compliance drew a large crowd. In the front row sat the Aegis leadership team, including Richard Cole and Sarah Vance, taking notes with intense focus. During the networking reception that evening, Gordon Fox, the VP of Sales, approached me. He held a drink in his hand, but his expression was unusually sober. "Impressive presentation," Walter, he said. "We have hired 3 new specialists to implement the calibration protocols, but progress is slow." "Quality improvement is a process," I replied. "We have spent nearly $2 million on new laser equipment," Gordon continued, lowering his voice. "Ironically, it is the exact same budget proposal you submitted 2 years ago that we rejected." I took a sip of my water and said nothing. "The thing is, Walter, we are still struggling with the software calibration sequences. The manuals you left behind were not complete. The documentation I left was comprehensive for the systems in place." At the time of my departure, I corrected him. "The new standards require different software tools, which you designed," he noted. "Look, Richard wants to meet with you privately. He is willing to pay you a substantial consulting fee to help us resolve the software issues. ICA staff are strictly prohibited from private consulting with certified entities," I said. "It is a clear conflict of interest." "He is prepared to make it very worth your time," Gordon pressed. "That would be illegal," I stated firmly, "and this conversation is no longer appropriate." As I turned to walk away, he grabbed my arm. "Walter, you do not understand. If we do not pass the certification audit by the end of the quarter, Eastbrook will terminate our contract. That is 30% of our annual revenue." I removed his hand from my sleeve. Then I suggest your team focuses on meeting the standards instead of trying to bypass them. As I walked away from Gordon Fox, Sarah Vance intercepted me near the exit of the exhibition hall. "Walter," she said, her voice dripping with artificial warmth, "you look well. This new position clearly agrees with you." "Thank you," I replied. "If you will excuse me, I have a panel to moderate." "Just a moment," she persisted, stepping in front of me. "We have been doing some restructuring at Aegis. We are creating a new division focused on precision technology advancement. The board has approved a very generous compensation package for the right candidate to lead it." "Are you offering me a job, Sarah?" I asked. "We are looking for someone who understands our unique technical challenges," she said. "Someone who can help us meet the new certification standards within a practical timeline." I smiled. "The ICA guidelines provide realistic timelines for any company committed to quality improvement," I said. "For companies that can survive those timelines," she muttered. Her pleasant facade cracked, revealing the desperation underneath. Aegis was in serious trouble. "If Aegis cannot meet the standards," I said, "perhaps there are more fundamental operational issues you need to address." The next morning, I received a formal notice from the ICA legal department. Aegis Precision Manufacturing had filed a complaint against me with the Ethics Committee and the Industry Oversight Board. They alleged that I had weaponized my position to target them, using inside knowledge of their operations to design standards they could not meet. They also claimed that I had deliberately withheld critical calibration documentation when I resigned, causing them severe financial damage. I forwarded the complaint to our legal counsel with a brief note, proceeding as anticipated. "Please initiate Protocol 37. Protocol 37 was our standard protocol for responding to certification challenges. It was a comprehensive review of all documentation related to the development of the new standards. The process typically took 3 weeks and produced a massive archive of evidence showing that our standards were based purely on public industry data and peer-reviewed research. While the ethics investigation proceeded, I focused on our next major project, the Attribution and Licensing Framework. This new framework was a voluntary program that required certified manufacturers to document and credit the original developers of any technical innovations they claimed as proprietary. 6 weeks after filing their complaint, Aegis requested an emergency hearing with the ICA board. As Chief Innovation Officer, I recused myself from the meeting to maintain transparency, but I watched the proceedings via closed-circuit video from my office. Richard Cole led the Aegis presentation, flanked by their corporate lawyers. Today, Richard projected confident outrage. "The new standards are technically sound," he conceded, "but the implementation timeline is punitive and targeted at us. We believe this represents a conflict of interest related to Mr. Miller's previous employment." The board chair, Rachel Thorne, responded with calm neutrality. "Our ethics committee has completed its investigation. The findings have been distributed to all parties." Richard accepted the folder handed to him but continued speaking. "Furthermore, we have discovered that Mr. Miller deliberately withheld critical calibration manuals and software scripts when he left, making compliance impossible for us." The ethics committee representative stood up. "That specific allegation was investigated," he said. "Page 47 of our report addresses the documentation protocols at Aegis. We reviewed the exit package Mr. Miller provided. It included 2,347 pages of technical documentation, 126 training videos, and transition notes. His documentation exceeded standard transition practices by 340%. "That does not align with our findings," Richard argued. "The actual calibration software code and the dynamic calibration manuals were missing." The representative looked at him. "Mr. Miller did not leave those files, because they are his personal, intellectual property. Our investigation confirmed that Mr. Miller registered the copyrights for those manuals and software scripts under 17 U.S.C. 106 before his resignation. Aegis never secured an intellectual property assignment from him. By attempting to copy and use those manuals after his departure, Aegis has committed copyright infringement under federal law." Richard's face went pale. He turned to his legal team, who were frantically whispering to one another. But the committee representative was not finished. Furthermore, we compared these findings with Aegis's quarterly investor reports and SEC filings. Your company claimed exclusive ownership of these calibration technologies to secure loans and attract investors. Because you did not own this intellectual property, these statements represent material misrepresentations under the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, specifically 15 U.S.C., paragraph 78 JBB, and Rule 10b-5. I watched Richard's confident posture collapse. His lawyers looked horrified. The meeting deteriorated quickly. Aegis's allegations had not only been dismantled, but they had also walked directly into a legal trap. My revenge was never about creating impossible standards. It was about creating a system where the truth could not be hidden and where corporate leadership could not steal an employee's work without consequence. For 7 years, I had kept records. I had documented every meeting where my ideas were taken and every email where my credit was erased. When I joined the ICA, I did not need to target Aegis. I only needed to create standards that required transparency. Their own greed and dishonesty did the rest. 2 days after the failed complaint hearing, the Aegis Board of Directors announced an internal investigation into the technical misrepresentations made by senior leadership. Within a week, Richard Cole and Gordon Fox were placed on administrative leave. The SEC initiated an inquiry into potential securities violations, focusing on the misleading statements about proprietary technologies in their investor communications. The company's stock price plummeted by 60% as investors panicked. The fallout was swift. Eastbrook Aerospace terminated their contract the following week, citing Aegis's failure to maintain valid compliance certifications. 3 weeks later, Sarah Vance arrived at my office. She looked exhausted, her usual sharp corporate suit replaced by a simple dark blazer. "The board sent me," she said, sitting down in the chair across from my desk. "We are facing severe consequences from the failed certification and the SEC investigation. Our revenue is down, and we are looking at layoffs. The board wants to negotiate a settlement with you." "What are they proposing?" I asked. "They are offering a public acknowledgement of your contributions, back pay for the raises you were denied, and licensing fees for the calibration manuals. They want you to grant Aegis a non-exclusive license to use your copyrighted protocols." I looked at Sarah. I did not feel any anger, only a quiet satisfaction that the system I had built was working. "The new attribution and licensing framework offers a path forward," I said. "If Aegis voluntarily adopts the framework, documents its entire innovation history, and pays the required licensing fees to the original developers, we can discuss a transition plan. That would mean admitting publicly that leadership took credit for work we did not do," she said. "Yes," I replied. "It means telling the truth." She nodded slowly. "I will take this to the board." The following month, Aegis Precision Manufacturing became the 4th company in our sector to adopt the attribution and licensing framework. Their public disclosure included a full reconciliation of engineering credits, acknowledging 26 technicians whose contributions had previously been claimed by the company. My name led the list, with 17 distinct innovations credited to me over my 7-year tenure. Richard Cole and Gordon Fox resigned from the company. The board hired a new CEO, an engineer promoted from within the company, who implemented a transparent compensation system tied directly to technical contributions. Martin Lewis decided to stay at Aegis to lead their compliance team. 6 months later, Aegis received full certification under the new standards. Their stock price stabilized, and while the Eastbrook contract was gone, they began winning new clients, attracted by their commitment to ethical practices and transparency. At the next industry summit, I presented the final version of the attribution framework. Over 60% of certified manufacturers had adopted it. During the Q&A session, a former colleague from another firm raised his hand. "How do you respond to critics who say this framework hurts corporate investment?" he asked. "Innovation without attribution is simply appropriation," I replied. "Companies that value their engineers attract the best talent, build the best products, and deliver the best long-term returns. This is about creating an ecosystem where excellence is recognized and rewarded." As the audience applauded, I thought about the white envelope I had placed on the conference room table. The revenge was not in leaving Aegis, or even in watching their leadership fall. The true victory was in building a system where what happened to me could not happen to anyone else. Recognition may be delayed, but precision leaves a trail of evidence that eventually tells its own story.